Shalom, and welcome back to B'nai Noach Academy, Thoughts on Life. Please remember to hit the like button, to subscribe if you haven't done so yet, and most importantly, to share this wisdom and inspiration with friends and family. So a very intriguing question came in on one of the comments of the most recent classes, and it reads as follows. Rabbi, I had a question about wealth. Coming from a Christian background, we were taught wealth is like a spiritual liability. We were taught it becomes like an idol and makes you lose your faith in Hashem, in God. My question is, since the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, were wealthy, is it such a bad thing to desire? Well, let me give you first a perspective that going back to the Tanakh, going back to the Bible. Let's start with the book of Proverbs, written by King Solomon. Chapter 10, verse 22. Birkat Hashem hi ta'ashir. It is the blessing of God that enriches. So that's one verse I want you to keep in mind. Another verse, and this is in Ecclesiastes and chapter 9, verses 11. It says, V'gam lo lachachamim lechem, nor is bread won by the wise, or literally, nor is bread to the wise, which means that when one has gains, it's not because you are so smart, it's not because you're so brilliant, it's not because you're so tactful, it's because, as it says in Proverbs, it's the blessing of God that makes you rich. Now notice, it says that it's a blessing of God, not a curse of God that makes you rich. So it's obviously a blessing. However, on the other hand, we do find people that unfortunately, because of their riches, it's not such a blessing because they don't do the right thing with the money, or worse, they actually convince themselves, believe that they and only they are the ones who are to be thanked for the fact that they are rich, meaning they don't acknowledge, in fact, they don't even believe that it comes from God. And that's very sad. But remember, like everything in life, life itself, it's a blessing. But God does not strip us. God never takes away from us that greatest gift that we have as human beings, namely free choice. So in everything, there's always a choice that one could make and one needs to make. Certainly we're encouraged, like for example in these verses, to look at it from the proper perspective, to really have a true Torah, a true godly perspective. And that is that the fact that somebody's rich doesn't mean that they're necessarily smarter than the other person, and certainly doesn't mean that they did it on their own. They couldn't have done it on their own. It's ordained by God, but it is a blessing. Now, what are the blessings in it? When used properly, think of the great influence and great impact that one could have because, and as a direct result of the fact that they are affluent, that they have the means. There's actually a saying which rhymes, and we kind of say it's a Hebrew word, but it's actually used more in Yiddish-speaking circles, and it goes, Baal Hameya, Baal Hadeya. You heard the rhyme, which means the possessor of the Meya, Meya is 100, is the possessor of the Deya, is the possessor of the opinion. Baal Hameya, Baal Hadeya. The one who possesses the money, he possesses the opinion. And that's typically true, even in proper circles where true perspective exists. But still, and think about it this way, the fact that God chose that person, the fact that God saw fit to give this particular person riches, whether the person is succeeding with it or not, whether the person is effectively fulfilling the mission that God intended, but the fact that God chose the person tells us that there's something special about that person. God obviously found something important, something special, something unique about that person. And that's why they chose this person to be God's representative, to be God's emissary in delivering the help to the poor, in influencing society, and so on and so forth. So in short, yes, to want riches, especially when one wants it, or perhaps exclusively when one desires it, not just for their own grandiose, but rather so that they can better serve God and do good things in the world, that's a great ideal. Why not? But remember, if one is not rich, or one doesn't achieve and doesn't get that dream to materialize, and that causes them to be sad, and that causes them to be depressed, and that causes them to be distraught, then it's obvious that their intentions, their desire in wanting to be rich has nothing to do with God. Then yes, indeed, it's a bad thing. Or if somebody succeeds and becomes rich and now takes the riches and uses it as a means to go against God, or not to fulfill God's wish for the person to do goodness and kindness in the world, obviously, once again, the person has failed and it's only all about themselves. So the money in itself is not a bad thing. Having riches is not a bad thing. In fact, you need it. You need it to accomplish all the good things in life, whether it's educating, whether it's feeding the poor, whether it's making houses of worship, whatever it is, it takes money. That's the way God set up the world. But if it's the money you're living for, not that the money lives for you, that you could enhance life, then you have a problem. And that's just the short end of this. Of course, this is a topic which deserves lengthy discussion in itself, as we'll do in the future.